Gary, give me a call after this. I gotta talk to you. Hey, Becky, you hear me? You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Awesome. Awesome. It said start and I didn't want to push anything I shouldn't. So
You're good. You're good.
good.
What happened to our cool music?
What's that?
What happened to our cool music?
Yeah, I can hear it.
No.
No.
Huh.
I can hear it on my end. Hold on.
Yeah.
I got you live on your channel, Renny, on your Facebook as well. I didn't do that last week. For some reason, I got you on this week.
All right. Let's see if we got good audio. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. We're going to get kicked off here in a
Yeah,
bit.
we're good.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, we can't hear it on this end of the music. Huh? Oh, did you hit play up on top? See the
Yeah, it's
little,
playing.
yeah, but it'll go full screen, I think, and that might bring the music up over to your
So
left. Left, right up on, I'm going to take a neck. Like, so if you go all the way to the top bar, across it where it says Renny Doyle podcast countdown to the left of that, there's going to be a little play button all the way at the top. I'm going to take your cursor, but I can't. Yeah, it's right. Your cursor's right there. Just go straight up, and it's literally right over to the left.
you can't see that screen. That's why it's like real small on my computer.
Ah,
Like I could barely see that screen.
oh, wow. Oh, well, we're going to get going here in a minute anyway. Hopefully, everybody's got good audio on all of us.
I'm checking the audio settings over here on my end, and it's
I can't see chat, so
I see chat. Jerry
What's
Grant
that?
says
Yeah.
nothing on my end. Can you hear us speaking, Jerry?
Yep, voices are good.
Oh, voice is good.
cool.
We'll work on this, Rennie.
Yep, we got it. We had it last week. We'll figure it out. Grand
Me.
scheme of things, not a big deal. We're going to roll it in here anyway. Well, I'll go ahead and start the countdown right now. Good morning, everybody. Let's go. Hey, Renny Doyle podcast here, and I've got Becky and Oscar with me this morning. Hope you're all doing well. It's great to be back. I felt really good. Guys, good morning. How are you?
Good. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning.
I'm doing good. Feel good. Got some coffee in me and got out this morning and spent some time outdoors and fed the horses and trying to figure out how Rip keeps getting his fly mask off because it's supposed to be an unremovable one and he keeps getting it off. So then Ollie wants his off. So
I think Ollie helps you with his.
I think so. I think they're, yeah, it's like having, 1,200-pound kids, So it was pretty cool this morning. I get out there and Rip standing right behind me, and I turn around. He just wants love. So he puts his head up against mine, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't need food right now. I need some love." So anyway, hey, great topic last week. We had a busy week last week. It felt good to be back on the podcast. We had a first of its kind paint correction clinic down at Uber Detail in Corona, California. We got several of those more planned throughout Southern California, and also we might be bringing those nationwide. Stand by. We're going to talk to the our training centers and try to get them involved in that. And so AFO planning. Becky's been up to her eyeballs in that.
Been, I think we talk at least 10 times a day on AFO, huh, Becky?
Oh yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Can't imagine the two of you. So, live message. I went live a couple of times. I went with the Mafia, and then with the general public. Those are fun to be back into that. And then educational series is going to start. This is something that we did for the general public of the detailing community, and we're gonna launch that hopefully next week. So I think Becky and Oscar are going to be up here next week. So we'll talk about that today. And then Oscar Mad Max Traveler, he's back in town unexpectedly. I don't think you were scheduled to be gone again, weren't you?
I was supposed to be in Monterrey, Mexico this morning. I was supposed to fly at 6, but some things happened down there. They couldn't receive me. So I just kind of pushed that out towards August, September. So I'm actually home in Ventura, as you guys can see in the shop, for a good 5 days, which feels weird because I haven't been home for 5 straight days in over 2 months.
Wow.
I
Have
have
you?
like 5 consecutive days at home is unheard of for me right now.
You might be too young to see the movie. Becky will remember it. A lot of you guys will, and a lot of vintage movie lovers. But Mad Max, the original
Yep.
one,
Yep.
kind of reminds me of just how Oscar, on the and I've traveled a lot myself. I've had those periods of my life, but I don't miss it. I do not miss it. I know some people are into it, but so stay tuned. Today's message, we have a lot of experience on this call and no theories out there. We're not going to throw a bunch of theories out there. This is what's really cool is that, Oscar, there's some little tidbits he's going to give you on building, really concentrating on a localized market and how everybody seems like wants to be. It's funny. I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine that knows an influencer in the industry, and I know the person definitely done a great job, of building it up, but they're real protective. Like, okay, is this person trustworthy? And I'm like, man, do you know what we've built? I mean, you're asking. Everybody's worried about somebody taking something from them, and God, just stop worrying and run your own game. Get involved. So Oscar's going to give some really good tidbits. I'm going to give some tidbits on that. We've built a lot of successful businesses up, and it's all come down to micro marketing in local areas and being known locally. I don't care about being known on a large scale. I want to know per how many followers I got. What's my return per follower? A lot of people don't look at it that way. You could have a million followers, but if your return's only $100,000, you're spending over that just to feed the million followers. I mean,
I just
because
talked about that in Miami this weekend. See
yeah,
some sellers out there. They're worried about followers, and I'm like, how many of them are your customers?
yeah, yeah. If you go on as a detailer and you've got a bunch of detailers following you, I mean, I watched a video this week. Somebody put up a reel talking about a piece of equipment they had, and saying, I bet you I'm the only detailer that has this. I saw a couple of them actually, two of these videos in the last week. They're not talking to their customers. They're not saying, "Hey, this is Renny, and I want to share a piece of equipment we've got that very, very few detailing professionals have. Yet we do." It wasn't about that. It was about flexing to other detailers, and it was like, "Come on, man, really? That's just a waste of air. I mean, that's just a waste of air. I don't know. I don't get it." And then Becky spent a good part of her career as a customer conflict resolution specialist, and she's going to share some unique angles and strategies because we all get people that are kind of ticked off at us every once in a while or misunderstandings. And so we'll have her jump in on that. But, four skill sets that, if mastered, will definitely change the direction of your business and your life. And I would say, instead of saying the word change, let's put enhance in there, because change a big word, and maybe you don't need change in your life. Maybe you need your life enhanced. Maybe you're 25 years into your business, you don't really want a lot of change, you just want it enhanced. So I kind of like the word enhanced better. But let's talk for a second. And we do this in a group in the mafia. We've done this in every business. Emotional intelligence and communication is that, guys, Oscar, Becky, how important during your careers. And Oscar, you're coming from a unique situation where leader, worked your way up through the Marine Corps. How important? We'll start out. I'm going to start out with Becky. I'm going to throw you out.
Okay.
You dealt with people that were not happy, correct? A lot of the times they
Correct.
had something going on.
Yep.
How important was just being able to take social cues and learning social cues and people's, how do you calm this person down, and then good solid communication. How was that in your line of work of taking care of problems with customers?
It's very important. My life changed when I learned to shut up when it comes to customers. I mean, that's true because, of course, when you have a upset customer, you're really quick, or at least in your mind, you're very quick. You want to defend yourself, correct? But sometimes you just step back and be smart and listen to what the customer's saying. A lot of times it's really not a big deal. It's very simple to fix. Sometimes they just want to be heard. And a lot of times, if you just let them tell you what they want and listen to what they're saying instead of what you want to say back to them, there's there's an you can solve it immediately. You should, of course, always know what your parameters are on what you can and cannot do to save a customer, or that type of thing, because you don't want to go monetarily crazy. But a lot of times it's very simple. Customers just want to be heard. You have to be intelligent. It also, by just listening and being quiet and letting them speak, um, it puts you in control anyway.
Yeah,
So,
like that. Well,
yeah.
and it's so many times too, is a lot of times when you just let people vent,
Yes.
they feel maybe that nobody's gonna listen to them. And and so many times I'm having a problem with one of my accounts right now is is that I'm trying to get a hold of them. Every time I try to get a hold of them, it's almost impossible. And then when you get a hold of them, um, they don't listen to your needs. They just blob theirs out there, and it's really frustrating. So when you do have somebody that wants to listen and they let you vent and let you kind of tell them the problems that you're having, it's such a relief and so different in today's age because it's odd. And so, the first thing I think a lot of people do is in the detailing service industries, they're gonna, they want to comp it. And a lot of times, sometimes that's the right thing to do is, okay, I'm not going to charge this person for this service. But a lot of times that's the wrong thing to do because what we used to do in a really bad, what we ended up doing is in a really bad situation. Let's say a worst case scenario, we had a bumper that we burnt one time, is that we were using rotaries back in the day, went over bumper. We didn't really, one of my team members didn't really realize it was repainted and we went after it and it burned a little section of it, right? It happens. So I got all the customer, obviously not very happy with us, and said, "Listen, we're going to take care of everything." And they threw a fit, and didn't want to pay for the whole job. And I said, "Well, hold on, we can't do that because we're going to take care of it. We got the job done. Wouldn't you agree that the vehicle looks nice? Yeah, but this, look at with the bumper nest. Hey, we're going to fix that. Matter of fact, we're not even going to have to repaint the whole bumper. He's got a great guy that's going to spot fix it. Won't even be able to tell. And I'll tell you what, I'll give you a follow up express service when we get done to recharge that coating, kind of get everything back up. How would that be? That's a almost a $200 value after the thought. Plus, we'll come in after it's out of the body shop, make sure it's all cleaned up. But 3 months later, we'll come back in and recharge that coating, make sure everything looks good, tidy up the inside a little bit. How's that? And instead of giving the job away, we still got paid. Now, we ended up they wanted to take a look at the repair before they paid us, which I thought was very fair. So we didn't charge them, didn't send them an invoice, didn't collect any money. Got the repair done. Good friend of ours took probably 10 days, and the customer it ended up to being a customer for life. And so
Yeah.
I think that there's ways to go. A lot of times, giving it away is not it,
Mm-mm.
right? So Oscar Marine Corps, you come back in there. I can't imagine, your theory of a lot of times as a leader, as you worked your way up, when you go to Lance Corporal and then you work your way up, how often did you just learn to start listening to the Marines? Or was it a different cadence in the
No,
Marine
I mean,
Corps?
honestly, as a junior Marine, you really don't see it. You want to be heard, and then you run into, and we've had these conversations a lot of times where I've learned more from bad leaders than I did from good leaders.
Mm,
Really, the good
yeah.
leadership that I learned from is the leadership that used to listen to the junior Marines. And that's what taught me one thing was, as a leader is to listen to your Marines, in the detail mafia, listen to the group, in the industry, listen to what's going out there. My current position right now with the company I'm with is just listen to everyone and take all that feedback and really just listen and give back. And it was just funny because, you mentioned I travel a lot, but I use my travel to read books. And I just bought a book and it's you know,
Yeah.
radical ability in itself. Be a badass leader
Good.
and a good human. And it goes back to what Becky was saying. And there's another book that I read, Learn when to speak up and learn when to shut up.
Mhm.
And honestly, working with Becky the last year has really changed how I react to certain situations. Because I want to quick and snap back and say something. And a lot of times I just pick up the phone and call Becky.
Right, right. Well, and I live on it. I've said on this podcast 100 times. Is doesn't need to be said. Doesn't need to be said
Yeah.
right now. Doesn't need to be said by me. And many times, it's no, no, no. And so you got to look at that. But emotional intelligence. A lot of people don't know. Really understand this. Is it's little abbreviations EQ. It takes years to build the emotional intelligence up, and reading is going to help. But really getting in, I mean, I went to Toastmasters. A couple of my kids really got involved in Toastmasters. If you don't know what it is, look it up, Google it. It's an amazing resource for entrepreneurs. And it gives you some emotional intelligence and how to communicate and how to read people. And reading social cues is really important. Knowing your environment knowing the environment that the people are coming from. How strange is this service to them? How new is it? How new is this level of service? I mean, you've got to be able to, it takes years to be able to take in. It's like a psychologist. You don't go and get a degree, you get your bachelor's, but then you've got to go on and continue your education to become a psychologist or any kind of medical specialist is the same thing as an entrepreneur. the more that you put into it in those early days in learning emotional intelligence, communications, it's going to help you resolve conflicts. It's going to forge powerful connections with customers, employees, and even partners. And what I'm saying by partners is spouses. Is especially, we're going to get into that here in a second. Is you as an entrepreneur are a very challenging individual, especially if you're having some levels of true successes. What are true successes? Mine's going back to when I was a much younger person. Is freedom, is that peace of mind, freedom to go out and enjoy. Just like you said this morning, I went out and had a mellow morning. I got up real early, and Diane leaves early, and before she even left, I was out with the horses and the cow. And damn, dude, that was just, I don't know, man. It was part of my emotional. It feeds you because you calm down. If you know anything about horses, they can read you from 10 feet away. And if you're all worked up, guess what they're going to be? And so I think this morning, looking back how emotional both of them were here I've got these two large animals on each side of me. And Diane's the horse person. I'm kind of new to this. I'm 3 years in. They're right there. I mean, and they just wanted loves. And there's times where they're worked up. Maybe I'm worked up and it caused them to get worked up. I'm not going to put myself in that position. You got to be able to read them. It's the same with humans. And so, here's some of the things that, placing yourself in new circles, reading people, reading books. Um, it's I'm reading a really good book right now that a good friend of ours, Norman, gave me. Never Split the Difference. It's by a FBI hostage negotiator, and it's teaching me a lot about negotiation and how much of life, you guys, is negotiation, not just in business, but okay. So Oscar, you mentioned good and bad leaders. I've always said this: if you're going to be, and I still say it, and my weekend warrior position in the Cal Guard is that you got to learn more times when I'm on drill weekends and search and rescue the same thing. Listen, I could go in and rock these guys' world with knowledge and know-how and years of experience. 80% of the time, I'm following because I'm developing other people's skill sets and helping them along the way. I've put the ego down. I've put the necessity down. I really believe in building up leaderships, letting them fail, letting them fall on their face, letting them skin their knees, because that skin's going to grow back and they're going to not do it again because they've got to learn. So as you came up through the ranks again as a leader, is that how much at first when you first became an E5, so for those that not familiar with the terms, that's a sergeant, and then you work your way up by the time you ended your career. How much did your leadership change?
A lot. I mean, I was on fire as a sergeant in Yuma, Arizona, and then that's the whole rank that I spent as a drill instructor. So I learned a lot. I mean, I was pretty young. I was 21, 22 years old, already as a drill instructor, as a sergeant. Spent my whole rank as a sergeant there. So when I got out, I got humbled real quick going up to Rochester, New York, and dealing with reserve component with the weekend warriors, and in charge of training them. It's a whole different world from training recruits to training reserves. And I was humbled. I was humbled by their leadership because I wanted to even still come in and be hard. And I really learned more and became more of a compassionate leader than just in your face straight, get things done, and just kind of understood more for human life, I guess you would say, because everything else I just grew up was just instant obedience to orders. We say something, you do it. There's no questions. And in the reserve component, it's a little bit different. They're weekend warriors. They have a life. They have careers. And we were dealing with CHP, sheriffs, police department, firefighters, and they would put on the uniform one weekend a month, and I didn't know nothing about it. And it was my first sergeant at the time who used to tell me, hey, we get Monday and Friday off after this drill weekend. These guys got to go back to their normal life. They don't
Yep.
have a time off. Like they don't have time off. And I think that's what really made me appreciate the leadership position that I was, and the leaders that I had with me there, is that it humbled me. And literally the book that I'm reading is Humility. And it's about a former United Nations peacekeeper who spent 20 years out of the service, but was a colonel and came back and was humbled by his sergeants. because
Wow.
he didn't know, and he was, he was being corrected by his junior shoulders. And that's why I read a lot. It's, to me, I geek out on books. But I'm either reading business or leadership. And when I saw this one, I just kind of read the back. I was like, I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think really what it comes down to is just being a good human. No matter what position you are, you're still a human being. We used to say it, everyone gets up in the morning the same and gets dressed the same.
Yep.
It's just what uniform you wear or what rank you have shouldn't change you or define you. And I think I learned that very young in the Marine Corps, coming in, and really it's just working with the reserve component, is that it humbled me. It humbled me a lot.
Yeah, it will. Well, right in there too is this with Becky is going right into that is look at your skill sets when you first came into, and you and I own businesses together. You come from a blue collar entrepreneur family, but when you got into your key position and duty was resolution of issues, how vastly different was your last day at that job versus your first day, and what was the key things that you took away from that? What did you learn that really made a difference?
One of the biggest things that I learned is, especially when you're only working in conflict resolution, which most company owners feel like that's all they deal with, it's a very small percentage. So when you understand that the majority of your customers aren't complainers, but you take each complaint differently and understand that you have to put yourself in their shoes. If you were the consumer, as they're speaking to you, try and put yourself in their position and listen to what they're saying. It grew me as a person, not only in conflict resolution, but also in my personal life. So from when I started, Rennie knows me really well. I'm I'm a hothead. I can be a hothead. And
Nah.
I
We didn't see that 2 weeks ago.
no, I learned, calm down, take a step back, pay attention to your surroundings and what's happening. Maybe the customer's having a bad day. I don't know. We all do, right?
Hmm.
But that's the difference between my first day and my last day was whether it's personal, whether it's business, just take a step back and listen to where that person's coming from as a human being, um, and a lot of times that's going to flush out your, people who are trying to get a free ride, because you have those, but that's a super small percentage. Most people either don't understand your business, don't understand what was, because sometimes you have to look back at yourself. Did you really explain what was going to happen in this service? What should they, did you build the right expectations? That's a
Mm,
learning experience for you as well.
that's
But
huge.
you have to listen to what the person's saying in order to, like Lisa here in the comments, she said that a customer came back asking for a full refund. And she calmly said, let me make it right. Let me make it right. So, and that's really good for business because she can prove that they can do it right. They make it better. That makes your business stronger. So that's where
Oh,
I'm at. It's more calm situation now for me.
I love it. Lisa. Let me tell you what we ended up. Again, I had the same approach at first. When people would say, "Man, I'm unhappy. I'm gonna give you your money back." Okay, right? What I learned is we never got an opportunity to make it right with that customer again. So what we
Right.
would do, Lisa, is that let's say that the customer's name was Tom. I'd say, Tom, I know you're really frustrated. This is not the norm for us. So I'm going to tell you what, the next one is on us.
Yep.
So they're still getting a full refund, kind of. But what that does is allows you to do is reconnect, fix your oopses,
Yep.
and maybe earn a customer back and their respect back. If you just give them a refund, there's no chance of that. They're pissed forever, and they still might push it. And it's at that point you're going to have to look at how bad a mistake did you do? Are they being reasonable in that request? If you really screwed the pooch, you're probably going to have to give them their money back. But if it was kind of, come on, it's not that bad. Don't tell them that because that
Yeah.
it's going to be that's going to make it worse. But that's one way, Lisa, that we got through that really made a big difference. And I want to tell you, 99% of the time, the customers ended up accepting that offer, and then we kept them as a customer because we screwed up and we were able to make it right. So let's jump to the next one. Let's take this to the personal relationships and how all this works. You need to realize that you're an entrepreneur, is that you're probably a pain in the butt, is that you're headstrong, you're super driven, you're intense. And then this is one that I had to really learn from my background of the way I grew up, and then also of just my personality. I'm a driven individual, and when I jump into something, I jump into it with every cell in my body. Is hyper concentration is normal for you, but it's not normal for the people around you, meaning spouses, children, friends, parents, colleagues, staff members. I had to take and it took me way too long with this, and especially for my poor kids, is that the way I grew up, man, is that, and Becky witnessed it. It wasn't. I mean, I look back, I say it wasn't an easy childhood, but it was. God, it was so cool. Um, but it wasn't easy. But I just accept. I mean, I didn't accept it, but I roll with the punches, right? But I started mowing my our lawns. I learned to fix a lawnmower. I put a lawnmower back together. I had somebody help me kind of rebuild an old nasty one, and it ended up being, I painted it and made it look good, and I got some work off of that. But my kids don't understand that. That hyper concentration on survival was my need, not theirs. And so you got to be really careful with that. Is that I remember that when our oldest daughter came out of boot and she got back from Paris Island, is that her whole discipline at the dinner table was completely different from what she'd ever been before and what our family had experienced. And slowly she worked herself back into being herself, but it was different. Her concentration and her discipline was over the top, coming out of boot. But what's all this above me? And I'm going to get these guys' opinion on this. Is we as entrepreneurs many times is we build walls, and walls turn into wedges in relationships, and then you're present but you're not there. So many times I say, man, I missed very few of my kids' events, and I'm going to say probably 20% of them, man, I wasn't present. I was there, but my mind was somewhere else, of stressing, man. I had a lot on my plate. I took a lot on. Diane wasn't working at the time, and I was a sole provider, and that puts a lot of pressure on that one single spouse, right? And while you view what you're doing is fantastic and for the greater good of yourself and your family, it's not viewed the same way by everybody, by them. Definitely not by staff, too. So you got to know this. You've got to share to your family, staff, your CPA, your bookkeeper, your best friend, understand your dreams, visions, and plans. Have they heard them? Do they understand your why when you talk about those things and why you're working so hard? You got to give them a chance to hear those things, understand those things, and buy into those things. And sometimes they're not going to buy into it, is that your mission's not going to be theirs. But somehow you've got to get them to join you. And if you try it by force, it's going to fail. Is that you can't lead by force. Is that a bad leader is going to be like, I think it was George Patton said it, you know, tell a soldier what you need to have done and let them do it. They're going to figure it out on their own. Don't micromanage that. If you micromanage your dreams, visions, and plans with others, especially family, um, they're not going to get it. And the next thing you know is you're going to be drowning. They're already drowning because they're around you, and it's not going to be a good situation. And I got myself into that pickle, and thank God I've got a great wife, and we've got skill sets that allowed us to work our way out of that. I think I mean, I wouldn't say every, because that's probably a misjudgment, but I think many, many, many successful business owners and entrepreneurs have probably faced that at some point. Uh, and it's tough. So this is why communication is involved in the emotional intelligence side. So, Oscar, what do you got? Anything on that one?
Oh man, I grew up a little bit different in the Marine Corps. Dude, I lost a family because I put the core in front of everything. I put deployments in front of everything, and that was my dream. That's what I wanted to do, and definitely wasn't present. Definitely wasn't doing the communicating. When I got out of the military and I started coming back into, the detailing and starting a business, I found myself in that same situation where I was constantly working. I was present, but I wasn't present. I was going to, to family gatherings and whatnot, but I wasn't there because I was always in the business. And this was actually just a topic on Monday night on a webinar that we had with the Detail Mafia with Jerry. And I think, Stevie B was asking a question as far as time off. If you're a business owner working 7 days a week, you may think that's cool and and that's what you need to do, but it really wasn't, and it took people like Joab Flores, who kind of took me under his wing and helped me black out my dates so I wouldn't have to work 7 days a week and
Let me
be
tell you,
present.
I'm going to jump in. Joab influenced so many of us because he came to training, and like so many of us, he was just a workaholic, right? And a switch went off. And dude, he influenced me when he got that RV and he started showing pictures of his family going out. And that dude was just, I mean, he just, I mean, he changed, I bet 25, 30 lives with influence.
Minimum. I mean, he showed me just blackout, and I was a small business owner, getting hustled by my clients when they would call me and be like, "Hey, can you detail my car on Saturday morning before a wedding?" Be like, "Oh, I'm supposed to go out of town with my daughter," and they're like, "Oh, come on, just real quick." And then it just turned out to be all day at work, and I was missing events because of that. And he showed me just the simple things of just learn to say no and don't give excuses. Just, I'm booked and that's it. And I think a lot of it is the way you communicate to your clients that you allow yourself to get hustled by them just so they can get what they want on your time. And as small business owners, you got to be able to put your foot down and start your months off 2 or 3 months ahead and just block out the days you want off and stick to
Amen.
that. And I remember Joab following up with me. He'd be like, "Hey, when you're going to go to your mom's ranch and when you're going to go down and visit family and like you got a 4 day weekend coming up." He would make sure that I was not in Ventura and that I was on my way down to see my mom because it was that accountability is what he provided for me. And I thank him. And now it's like, talking to guys like Stevie B about it, it's, where he's finding himself 7 days a week, constantly busy. You know, I I
It's
was
tough.
taught to work less and make more. And that's really what it came down to. Work less, make more. And that's something that I talk to detailers all over the world. We're all over the country and in Mexico now that I'm traveling out to Latin America is the same thing is, don't work so much. The work's always going to be there. And one thing that Joab taught me was work less days, make more money. And it didn't make sense in my head until I started doing it. You know,
Joe, I recently had a conversation with him, and he goes, and I said, hey, how's life going? He goes, hey, dude, I've had to revert back. I'm going back right now. I need this position filled, and then once that's kind of done, I'm going to go back to that. There's going to be times, and it's just like a chapter in a book where you're going to have to go back and grind it out. I had that in 2024, man. I hadn't worked that hard. Matter of fact, the last 8 years when Double Black took off, I had a nice, I had a nice lifestyle. I'm not complaining now at all, but it got really intense, right? And it's a chapter, but it leads to other chapters. So every once in a while, you're going to have to go back. But this time it was cool because he knew when to take that afterburner and shut it down. And you can already see him. He's out back. Did you see him recently?
I was
It
up there
showed
when I
him
called
up.
them. Someone from the detail mafia asked me for marketing, and I looked them up and I said, Joab's the point of contact for this. I called him and he was like, "Oh, I'm on Starlink, man. I'm out in the middle of nowhere."
Yeah,
And I'll follow up with them this week. But he and like you said, you got to go back. He's back in a position because I understand where he's taking his business. I
amen.
went from working 4 days a week to now traveling three weeks out of the month. So I'm back in that position where it's like I got to build that back up, but then I got to start pulling back and
Right.
settling down to it. So
I got 3 words. No effing way. No, 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 none of that. And again, Becky, knowing you for since we were kids, I know, and you're still guilty. We all are. Is that I know you get a hold of, you're like a bulldog with a bone, right? And how do you turn that off? I mean, I already know because how's that Jeep coming? is that you've got a real hard you still, and it was amazing to start working with you a year ago again and see that your dedication is as just as both you and I are dang near 60. Can you believe that?
Damn.
I'm proud of that though. I don't care. I like
Don't
it.
tell
We
my
live this
brain.
long. I mean, we live this long, but I mean, hey, we got to work on this with you because you're just you're intense. But is there a point? Did it break you of overworking? Did it ever break you?
Yeah. Well, I would say yes. Um, I have a few things on this last segment that you talked about. And it's very important, of course, like what Oscar says, that you need to take time for yourself and your family. You can't put your family aside. But as an entrepreneur, I also understand the drive and the passion and how excited you get. And people look at you when you're telling them your dreams, and they look at you like you have four heads and they don't
Mm.
understand it. You know what I mean? And you're just spewing out all this, you have all this energy and excitement. One thing is your team, and this is something, and I don't mean, maybe I'm backing up just a little bit, but I've seen this happen in real life where a large company takes their team of, I don't know, there was probably about 200, 250 people there, and the CEO got up and went over his plans, wrote it out, and I know a lot of company owners are afraid to tell their employees where they're going, what they're doing, what their plans are. They just want them to come to work, do the job right, make our customers happy, and go. But if your employees feel like they're part of something bigger, it's going to not only help you, but they're going to understand where you're coming from. And then you all have a goal together. This is where we're taking the company. We're a team. This is what we want to do. These are my visions. And I've seen it work where 250, actually, the whole entire company was probably about 750 people. At that particular meeting, there was about 250 people. And I got to tell you, the years after that, the strides that company made and the teamwork that the each group came to was amazing. And I've also had it where the CEOs hold everything secret, just go do your job, just go do what you need to do, and nobody understood. Everybody thought everybody was being taken advantage of. Well, these guys just get to take vacation and they get to do this and that, and they don't even know where the company is going. Do we have a future? Do we not have a future? Where are we going? You need to communicate that to your employees, to your team, and so that you all together can pick up that company and move forward with
Mm.
the same goal, and I didn't mean to go backwards about that, but I think it also comes into effect where they see how hard you're working and what your goals are. So that when you take 1 or 2 days off, they understand. They
Right.
understand that you need to spend time with your family as well, and you need to have that same respect for them as well.
Amen. Well, we just 2 weeks ago we sat down and I shared my vision with you two. You know, how
Mhm.
helpful was that?
Opened
Absolutely
my eyes.
helpful.
Yeah, it opened up my eyes. It was just, it was good. It was good to hear and be a part of it,
Yes.
and be appreciative of what you are thinking and what you're going through, and where we're going forward with this. To be part of it, it was really good. I mean, it
Yeah.
was really, really good for us to hear. At least for
It,
me. I know Becky, we talked about it afterwards, and
Yeah.
it was very refreshing to hear, how you feel, and where you're taking this and what's next.
it shows, I mean, right, just involving, there's a 20-year plan, right? And not just for our who's here now, but who's here in the future. I mean, it's so exciting. But if you don't share those things, like Becky said, that's huge, So Becky, you said two things: share your mission, right?
Mhm.
And then also, you said something earlier is when you approach a customer, man, all of us are going through battles. I mean, if you look what through last year, I had a tough year. This year's been a kind of a last year and this year for my wife has been kind of a tough year. And so you've got to be sensitive to what people's battles are. because
Mhm.
that can change a person's. You might have a calm customer that's a little uptight. What's going on? Don't ask them.
Mhm.
Just be sensitive that, man, they might be going through some pretty deep rooted crud that they don't want to share with you, but they're going through it. They might have lost somebody. They might be losing somebody. Somebody could have cancer. They lost a pet. They got their job's not going well. I mean, they're not happy with them. I mean, just a million different things. You look at. I got tied up, and I don't know if you guys feel this. I backed away now, but with all this stuff going on, with all the demonstrations, riots, bombs being dropped, threats. I just finally 2 days ago, 48 hours ago, I said enough. I'm not going to check into this. I'm going to check in about every second or third day, and I feel a lot better. Of what I let in, and so it was changing just that little bit. Well, if you got somebody that watches the news nonstop, oh my God. I mean, I don't know how to do it. I don't want to do it. I just don't want that part of it. I don't want all those emotional ties to me, because I get it wrapped around the axle and I'm in trouble. So communication is everything in business. So we're going to kind of run through this is before the sale is I love what Becky said earlier, set that expectation during the customer accusation, when you're taking and acquiring a customer, what you say and how you say it's so important. During the service is that a lot of people don't think about this. Are you updating them? Are you sending them short little videos, photos, updates? We do. That's what we teach. And then follow-up communications, long-term communications. What about internal communications with yourself? Are you communicating with yourself? People think, well, of course I am. Are you writing it down? Because if it ain't written, it ain't happening. And then with that, staff communications, vendor communications, contractor communications. Who do I contract with? My bookkeeper and our CPA. Is I just had a half an hour conversation with one of those yesterday. And then learning to handle conflict is back to comms is customer conflict, staff conflict, vendor conflict, and family conflict is that you've got to take and be able to listen. If you're just a bulldozer in conflict, how do you think how do you think that's going to play out? Is we've all seen. Becky, did you work for anybody in the big corporation that was just a bulldozer?
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. Because I think in big corporations, they think that's the only way you can get to the top. Is
And then
bulldoze for everything.
I agree. And then Oscar, I can guarantee you, I think why I'm still in right now is that I've got earth movers as leaders, meaning they're shaping the ground for other people. I don't have any bulldozers right now. I dealt with bulldozers for 4 or 5 years and I was so burned out. In your careers in the military, and then now in your career as a detailer, and now working as a company rep, how was it working with bulldozers?
It was interesting. Again, it goes back to I learned more from bad leadership than good leadership.
Mhm.
Mm.
Because when they are bulldozing and they're going, full throttle, and it just you can see it. I can see it now a mile away. I could see it by learning I learned how to read people. I learned how to identify things. I think before they happen, because I could just by the way someone is acting, just say in a meeting and trying to drive something so hard that it's just like this is not for me. I'm just gonna stay away and again just keep my mouth shut and keep just steer clear of it because I don't want to be around that. It's not good for me. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for any workplace. And if you're this type of leader in your shop, um, your employees are going to leave. It's gonna happen. And going back to me traveling, the good thing about it is that I get to meet a lot of detailers. I get to see a lot of different shops. I get to walk into a lot of work environments where I see the good, the bad, and the ugly of the workforce in a shop. And I've had detailers come up to me, technicians, and say, "Hey, how do I get out of this and do my own thing?" And the first question I ask is, why would you want to? And he's like, I don't like being here. And when a technician, a detailer tells me that it's working for a shop, that just tells me something about the leadership. They're bulldozing their way through things and just, they're all about the work, 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 and not treating them as human beings, but treating them like
Mm.
robots.
Yeah, and they're
And
not going to. If staff are not going to be you, that's the biggest lesson I had to learn. Was they're just not. Now every once in a while we got Jorge. I mean, he was almost a direct mirror of me, you know. I mean, and out of all the staff I've had, um, him and Hardy, a kid named Hardy, which I couldn't believe that we hired. I didn't want to, and it ended up being one of the best things we ever did. And and so most people, 99% of people you're going to work with you, they're not you. And they're not going to have the dedication. They're not going to, and the sooner you accept that, they got good traits and good ethics and they work hard, but stop putting the same demands on other people that you put on yourself. I learned that the hard way with my staff and my kids. Now, Diane is psycho like all of us are. So Diane, it's a lot of times she pressures me because we're the same mindset, right? But that's like not common, right? So you've got to be careful with that. So kind of a mind shift is leaders with a really high ability to communicate. They don't just lead companies; they lead movements at the smallest and largest levels. What's that mean? Is that we've got people in this industry I watch that have got 2 or 3 thousand followers, small amount by most standards. Yet when I watch them, they get my attention. That to me is more important than somebody that's got 100,000 followers. Is there? Are you showing the world how to do stuff? Are you influence people on on a mind shift? And a mind shift, if you're a detailer, should be mind shifting your community to buy more details and educate them on details, not what a damn product is to other detailers. That's not your job. And I understand, hey, if you want to be an influencer, more power to you. Good luck, right? There's a lot of them out there. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I just think, Bob Phillips has said it best. Know what you are, know what your job is. And so let's jump into sales, wordsmithing, and persuasion. And, no matter what your industry, no matter what you're doing, you are selling. You're selling an idea, a service, a product. Um, Persuasion is a fundamental skill that separates our dreamers from the doers. And when I say persuasion, is I don't mean like in a used car way. I mean, we've got what we call the soft touch approach. Is that as long as I've known Becky, we've done this. Diane and I did it. Is that, and then definitely Oscar. We don't want to force anybody into buying something they don't want. We want them to come to training when they're ready. I want them to buy a double black product when they're ready. I want them to get a Dynabrade tool when they're ready, and only if it's their favorite. When people come through the training class, the 5 day, I always say the same thing. We got all these tools out here, every make and model you can think of. And I go, do you guys know what my favorite tool is? And they always point to mine, right? And I said, no, it's the one that you pick. My favorite tool for you is the one that you like. And that really settles them down because they can freely take and discuss what the tool what their favorite is. A lot of people will say this, and you guys, I want to get input on this at the bottom of this, but I'm not a salesperson. Well, buckwheat, you kind of are. Uh, but you don't need to sell, is you need to be so passionate about what you do and you love to talk about others to it and you're really good at communications that you're selling without knowing it and without them knowing it. People don't like, I like to sell people without them knowing they're being sold. Is that I want them to feel confident in their purchase. I've done that anywhere from, I used to sell go-kart tickets when I was a kid, right? I wanted them to come to the go-kart track and we'd clean the cars. Everybody thought it was nuts. We'd keep them clean. Why? Last thing you want to do is go to a go-kart, to an amusement park and get into a dirty thing and come out with oil and stuff like that, especially when you're a teenager, because, you got to be present for the hot chicks, right? And then believe what you offer. Believe 100% in what you're doing. Learn to speak better. Back to communications. Master the phone. So many service businesses are absolutely horrible on the phone. So we know that. So what do? We did the phone well. We still do the phone well. You got to dress the part. You got to look the part. You got to talk the part. You got to communication the part. Your website's got to take and talk the part. Your social media's got to do it. Your everything that you do. Your LinkedIn page has got to communicate that. Is again, our approach to sales has always been the soft touch persuasion style, and it's just a very, very confident tool that will allow you to bring more customers in, turn them into lifetime customers. And so, guys, what do you got to add to that? Let's go Becky this time.
Okay, I have to come at you from a customer standpoint because I'm new to the detailing industry and I've told this story. You, Oscar, you guys have heard it like probably 20 times, but I will never forget when I got my car um, coated, for the first time. And this is something that your customers, to the detailer, coating a car is, you do it every day. You don't see it. But when you have never had a car in your life that's been coated, and then all of a sudden you have a coated car, it is amazing. I literally was, and I know the detailers tell me, don't tell me this, but I was taking my hand and touching my paint. I was just, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever seen before. Right there, that is selling it because I literally loved it. I really did. I told all my neighbors, come feel my paint, come feel this car. And they thought I was nuts. But that's part of selling when you're passionate about something, when you know about something, it
Absolutely.
really gets people excited. And I'm not necessarily a salesperson, but you always have to be. You always have to be. And you always are. Whatever you're saying, whatever's coming out of your mouth, whether it's just in normal conversation, you're selling something.
Well, and now you're a serious car person. So it's credit to Becky when we were kids, teenagers, car crazy, but our family, we didn't have a car that worked most of the time, right? So Becky used to tell me, I mean, she had a really good eye for really good cars, right? And she'd tell me, God, look at that. I want one of those. And I was like, oh man, that car's stupid. And then like 5, 10 years later, that car, I'd be like, damn, that's a hot car. And she'd always nail it. Like she was so before her time. I talked her out of buying, oh God, I don't even know if I want to, I don't even know if I want to bring this up because it's going to be a sore subject the rest of the week. I talked to you that, yeah, there's a really cherry Carmagia for sale, the convertible. Remember I talked you out of buying that?
Yes. Oh, kick your ass.
That thing would be $100,000 car now, man. It was so rare, and I can't believe I did that. So the credit to her is, but coming into it is. So, Oscar, I know you're really into the whole sales system because sales it's a system. It's an SOP, right? So, what's your take on what we talked about a little bit, in those bullet points?
I mean, sales to me, I mean, I've done extensive training on sales ever since, started working in the manufacturer side as not necessarily in the shop, just to sharpen those skills. But one thing I will tell detailers is, and I said it in Miami this last weekend when I was out there with Top Tier, um, is, detailers want to overcomplicate things and they start throwing out brands and they start throwing out this 9H, 10H and all this other stuff. When reality that when a client calls me and starts asking me what H level is my coding, or if I use this product or that product, the first thing I ask them is, who did you talk to before you called me? Because you're trying to sell them someone's product instead of selling your service. Sell you. Be
Amen.
you. People buy you.
Amen.
They don't buy, nothing. If I'm using double black or, Renny and, why use this? And, because this guy's on names on the bottle, like your clients don't know that. And if you just keep it simple, stupid is the way I see it now. And again, I had a great conversation with the Miami detailers down there, where this guy's like, well, how would you sell a coating? Like, how would you say, he asked me, how would you sell me a coating? And I was like, I don't think you're in the market for a coating. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, you're not in the market. I said, how old are you? He's like, 19. What do you
Hmm.
drive? Well, I drive this nice car. I was like, yeah, dude, you're not in my market. Like, I'm not going to sell you on a coating because I'm going to charge you this, and this to get that coating done. I said, can you afford that? And he was like, yeah, that's way out of my range. So I wouldn't sell you on one. And all the detailers were like, bing. Because it's like they thought I was going to go to the technical side of, I got to do this and I got to use this alkaline soap and then I got to use a pH balance soap and I got to use a clay bar and clay. Like, guys, I mean, in reality, your clients are not going into that. When you go in to buy something or any other service, they're telling you an experience. And that's what I tell them out there. Sell an experience, you're selling a service, but it's really how you treat that customer and how you make them feel. Sometimes you overcomplicate detailing and it makes your customer feel stupid because they don't know what it is or what you're talking about, that you just overwhelm them with information. They're like, yeah, I just wanted to get my car washed, dude.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
You
coming
just
at me with all this technical stuff. And it's cool that we're knowledgeable in our industry and we know it because we have to know
amen.
it.
Amen.
right? I teach the education side, like you have to know all of this stuff. But when you're coming to sell, I've noticed recently in the past year or two that we're overcomplicating things by trying to sound smarter than the guy down the street. But yeah, that guy's busy because all he's putting is an advertisement to sell ceramic coatings, and it's a long-term protection for your vehicle instead of all the technical stuff, and I'll close out with this. When I used to be involved in my chamber here, like Becky said, I used to have people selling my services at the chamber before I even opened my mouth. I would walk into an event and I had 3 or 4 people come at me with, you met Jennifer for Food Share. She'd be like, "Oh, I talked to Jennifer. I touched her car and I want the same thing that she does." Great. I didn't have to sell nothing. At this point, it's like, let me pull out my calendar, see when I can book you.
Amen.
Because like
There's what
the
you want.
customers were selling it for me. And they were like, "Oh, he put this coating on. It's amazing. Come feel my paint." They would feel the paint and be like, "Oh, I want that on my car." And it was like the
I'm
sale
not the
was,
only one.
yeah,
Yeah.
the sale was done. And to me, I didn't have to overcomplicate it. So again, I can geek out on sales. We can do 3, 4 pipes for series on just sales, but I will leave off with this. Don't
Well,
be Matilda's dad. And if you haven't watched the movie Matilda, just don't be that grimy, shady, make your customers feel bad like they got ripped off. Everyone's in this industry to make money, and in every industry we got to make money. That's just what makes the world go round. But just don't be shady with customers, because I do meet a lot of detailers and I watch them sell and what they tell me, and they're just like, yeah, I tell them it's a 5 year, but really I just use whatever I had in the shop. And it's like there's ethics behind sales,
oh,
and ethically right when you are selling and you are providing the service that you're selling, because it's so easy again in this industry to do a car, get someone like Becky that wasn't in this industry. I'm like, "Oh, look, this is what I did." And I sold her on all these fancy words. And I just used, you know, a spray sealant vice, a 5 year coating, So ethically, as a sales rep, as a salesperson in a business, just be ethically right when it comes to business, as a business owner, and sell yourself, sell an experience, and don't try to overdo it.
I'll never forget. I came back to the shop one day and I didn't, this one service we offered, I can't remember what it was back then. I never liked it. I just felt I didn't, it was kind of in demand back in the day. This is probably late 90s, early 2000s. And I just remember coming back in. I said, I'm taking it off, man. I just don't like it. And so you've got to sell the person who can sell with confidence and build trust with their customers. That's a big one, is that you're going to build, scale, and dominate in your market. It comes down to that. And so let's go through. I'm going to go through this next section pretty fast, and it's called strategic thinking. But then I want to come down to get these guys involved in the self-discipline side, because I think that's a lot of people is that's what they're missing, whether it's in a lot of cases. So strategic thinking is high achievers think about the now, the near future, and long terms. Other are stuck on the day-to-day mode, and recovery from the mindset is really difficult. You're going to have a hard time when all you are is day to day, day to day, day to day, day to day. And we see it every single day in small businesses, right? Especially in the detailing industry, is that you've got to think about right now. I understand that is that, I've said it so many times. I remember going to gas pump just praying that my ATM card would work, my debit card would work. I remember the times of thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have anything on the books, and one job would come in. I was like so excited to bring $150 in. I understand that, but you can't get stuck. That is a temporary thing when you have all these other things in place. Is it's going to change, but if you get stuck in that mindset, recovery from that's really difficult. And then strategic thinking means to understand the bigger picture, choosing your moves that's going to position you 5 steps ahead. And so while your competition is taking 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, and then 4 steps back because they overspent, they're buying stupid stuff, they're marketing to detailers, they're trying to be an influencer, you're going to go on and take and produce income, buy houses, have kids, support your community, volunteer, and they're still going to be in the same place because of their mindset and what they're doing, and they know it all, and they're not going to move ahead. So categories of strategic thinking is your plan. You got to have a written out plan, man. Mine's like 3 pages, not huge, but it is very detailed with bullet points. And I could bring probably a 12 or 13-year-old kid in, and they'd pretty much understand it. It's not difficult. Execution. If you're not going to execute, Why bother? And then strategic menus is so many menus are screwed up. It doesn't matter what industry, food, anything else. You look at again, you look at, Chick-fil-A, you look at In-N-Out Burger, they've got their menus on point. They know how to make money. And then your SOPs, your standing operated procedures. How much linear, how in depth do they go to where everybody yourself knows it? When you get on a job, you do A through Z and it's right in a row. And then your financials, how strategic are your financials? How much planning do you do? Is that I just told you, I just spent half an hour with our bookkeeper yesterday. I'll spend another, 20 minutes with her probably on Friday. And then dream, vision, plan, execute, repeat. Always stop. Dream it out. Is that I just came up with an idea that I still got to talk to Oscar about for something within the mafia that I think is a really great idea that's going to help us and it's going to help us help other people while people help themselves. It's what we call self-licking ice cream cone. Is the ice cream cone never drips anything on the ground because it's just automatically cleaning itself up all the time, and that's huge. I have to go into that a little more sometime. Now, your mind shift is get out of survival mode. This may take making a lot of hard decisions and making your business part time. This is a really start. Some of y'all listening right now is maybe in the summertime or in the prime time. If you're down in Florida, it's opposite seasons. But maybe right now your business is your full time gig. But don't be too proud to turn it to your part time gig in the slow times. Because if you get your menu right, your service right, the connections, eventually you're going to be able to drop that part-time gig. Even, we remember when 9/11 hit, that was a big spooky one. I was ready to go back to work. We didn't know what was going to happen, especially because we were so involved in the aircraft side of things. But a good example is to stay mobile until you have the right correct amount of funds and support for a fixed operation. So many people take and get this backwards is they want to get mobile, or they want to go into a shop. They just think you build it and it's going to come Field of Dreams movie. You need to watch that because so many people think it's a Field of Dreams. I'm going to build it and they're just going to rush to my door. And that's not the case at all. Is that you have got to be ready. The demand for you to have a shop's got to be there. And you say, well, I really can't do coding. It's bullshit. I don't agree. We just had a class down at Uber last week, our little clinic we did, and we coded a car right out underneath. We had canopies up. It was a nice calm day. It was warm. It was probably 85, 90, somewhere right in there. And we got it done. And we showed people how to do it. And so, that mind shift is an important part of it. So now, you guys got anything to add to that little category of strategic thinking? Anything else we can move to it?
Yep, we covered it.
Okay, cool. Self-discipline. Okay. This is a muscle that moves mountains. If you can be disciplined and regimented and it's your skills are secondary, is that discipline, even on going back to communications again, please, thank you. I mean, just having just good common sense, being polite is self-discipline builds consistency. Consistency builds momentum. Momentum builds legacies. And that's what you want, is you want a legacy small business that you ride off into the sunset when you want to, at the age you want to, with the financial status you want. Now, be real. Are you going to there's a reason this car's back here, is that I could have bought anything I want. I'm a Porsche nut. I mean, I almost feel like I'm cheating, with that car sitting here. But I looked at my grand scheme of things of what I want my future to look like, and I'm not going to go spend $300,000 to $500,000 on a GT2 or GT3 RS. It was a decision. Is that you've got to make those decisions, and is the momentum that you build is so tied back to your communications, your SOPs, your self-discipline, and moving ahead, and then facing realities. So creating structure with non-negotiable habits, doing what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like it. Okay. There's times like yesterday, I was like, man, I needed to finish my workout. So I'm on this kick. I'm trying to get to 500 incline push-ups a day. And I've done it every day this week, but I got a follow-up workout after that. And then I've got I've got to get on the bike or I've got to go for a walk. I did not feel like doing either one of those, but I made myself do it. Surrounding yourself with people that will hold you accountable. Not only that, but like we said, Joab, is that he held us accountable by being an example. Is we just had Justin Labato. He got in his first, organized, not a fist fight, guys, a boxing tournament, And I don't know if you guys got to watch it. I watched it, and it was powerful. The guy's over 40 years old. He dropped a bunch of weight, went back into, he had been boxing as a youth, and he decided that here he is, 40 or 41 years old. He decided to jump back in the ring, and he did it. And that took a lot of discipline. So your mind shift is be a creature of good habits. And so, Becky, self discipline.
Self-discipline. Actually, in the comments, I wanted to bring up that Ryan asked, and this figures right into this. It says, what have you tried not to drift back to doing work so that you're mentally present at family events and vacations? And when I answered him and I was like, it's a discipline. I believe that's a discipline, as well as working your business and all of that. Bringing yourself back to relaxing or spending time with family, that's a discipline too, especially for an entrepreneur. It's very hard to turn it off. But that's something I wanted to touch base on is that even though you're working in your business, that's a discipline. It's very important. Customer services is a discipline, very important. But also your personal life, that's a discipline. It has to be a discipline. Working out, you and Oscar, you guys work out every day. That's a discipline. That's you taking time for you. So I believe those are very important disciplines that you need to take to stay healthy.
Oscar?
Like Becky said, getting up at 4:30 sucks, but being at the gym at 5 a.m. feels good. So embrace the suck. I said that last week. Embrace it, but the discipline that you need to have to create a business is it's got to come within. No one's going to come in and do the work for you. No one created this behind me. No one created that behind Renny. We did it. It took a lot of hard work and discipline. And there is no magic pill that you're going to take, or you're not going to join any kind of group or forum or Facebook group that's going to make you successful. There's going to be people around you that help you to your right and to your left. But at the end of the day, you got to wake up and you got to answer that call. And you have to be the one that disciplines yourself to get the work done, because no one is going to do it for you. And I think that's the hardest thing to do in business is to keep that discipline, because like Renny goes and says, when you open up a shop, I mean, remember my grand opening, my ribbon cutting? I focused 3 weeks on doing a ribbon cutting here at the shop with the chamber and getting a food truck and getting this and that I completely forgot to book cars. I forgot to book work. And the day after my ribbon cutting, I found myself handing out business cards at Target because I was so focused on something else. I completely forgot to book work for the week after or the day after. And Rennie's right. I opened up a shop and I did not have a line outside of my shop. I had to go out there and get it. But again, that starts off with waking up in the morning and doing something and getting to work. It took discipline to get up at 4:30 in the morning. It took discipline to get to the gym. It took discipline to be at my shop by 7 to get, on a phone call with these two, 7:30. All of that, it comes within, because yeah, my alarm went off at 4:30 and I looked at it and I snoozed, and then 4:35 went off and I'm like, I need to get up. But you know what it was? I hear that Justin Labato and that, relentless as F right here. I don't set a plan that I hear it. And that's the people that push me in my mind. Mentally, I hear those people saying, get up and go. Because if they
I
can, I can do it. If Rennie can
don't.
get up and work out, I can get up and work out. And
Amen.
that's how I see it. Is
And
the people that you surround with that have that discipline, that it feeds off of you. You know what I'm saying? That's gonna feed off of you. Because if you hang out with people that just make excuses, you start making excuses. If you hang out
here's
with
the
people,
other thing is if you don't, as a kid, I wasn't one of those kids that slept in forever. I was too excited to get on my bike, explore, lose skin, and that whole tempo has gone through my whole life. If you're excited, why do you want to lay in bed? Now, there's days after a, after a 5-day training, I still don't sleep in. Sleeping in for me is like, I don't know, maybe 7:30. I mean, that's a late morning for me, right? Because I've always been so excited to attack life. And I don't like waking, even on, drills. I'm 2.5 hours away from I've got to get up. I've got to be, if we're going to have a 6 a.m. first formation, I'm out the door at 3 a.m. here, or I've got to stay down the hill. But usually because I don't want to be away from Diane. But pretty soon, Oscar, don't you think the endorphins set in at such a cool level at the gym, and it makes you feel so good about what you're doing that it doesn't become a discipline; it becomes a part of life.
It is. And the traveling to me has slowed me down at the gym. And I felt it the last 2 days going to my normal gym here. But even that is, I have the discipline to pick hotels, not based on the food, the restaurants. I look at the gyms. If you ain't got a good gym, I'm not staying at your
Yeah,
hotel.
screw
If
that.
you don't
Right,
got free weights,
right,
because
right.
it does become part of life. And it does become a part of who I am to where I'm not working out. I don't feel right. My day is just not the same. If I get up and don't work out, I do not function the same. And I felt this on long travel days when I came back I traveled for pretty much more than 14 hours before I took a nap at that in that parking lot. I felt like for 2 days I was out of it because it was, the traveling does catch up. But it's up to me to get back into that than by saying, you know what, I'm just gonna put that aside now. And I just can't because again, it just becomes a part of who you are that, it just kind of drives me to get up and go. It sucks. It sucks getting up at 4:30, but getting out in the cold and being there at 5 in the morning and seeing, the 20 other people that are there. It's like you share that common feeling with those people in the gym, and even they motivate you to work out, you know. And
Love it.
it's just the motivation thing. It's just we're not just there going through the process. And it's the same thing with business. Hang around with successful business people, small business owners, you're going to be successful business owner. That's why I got so involved in my community and in my chamber, because that's what drove me. When I got there, it was like going to the gym. It was just a wealth of knowledge that I wanted to be a part of it, and that we shared and we moved each other and lifted each other up.
I dig it. So I'm going to ask the people listening right now. I'm going to ask you three questions, and there's not a bad answer to any of these. Do you own a job? And what that means is that you might call yourself an entrepreneur, but really what you've done is you've gone and created a income source that's better than what you can make if you're out in the job market. And that's okay because maybe in the job market you're making 20 bucks an hour and detailing you're making 35. Good for you. But the next thing is do you own a business? And what that means is that you are taking in whether you're by yourself, because a lot of people don't consider you an entrepreneur or really owning a business if you don't have multiple people working. I don't agree with that because you could be so in need that you're out there producing, 150, $250 an hour, 8 hours a day, 4 days a week. Why did I say 4 days a week? Because at that point, is that you're building something bigger than a business. You got a life at that point, or that business is bigger and more successful, and bringing more in and what is that more successful? Bigger is not more success necessarily. Matter of fact, bigger a lot of times we've seen a lot of shops bite the dust this year that were successful shops, the operators and everything else that aren't doing it anymore. We see it every year in the industry. Or are you building a legacy? Now, a lot of people think that a legacy business is something that your kids are going to take on, your grandkids are going to take on. Maybe not. My kids have all gone different directions, and so they've gone out and built their own lives and everything else. But I'm building a legacy business because I've got other people involved that the business is going to go on after I go. These guys see my plan, of when I back off a little bit, when I back off a lot, and I'm never going to disappear until the day they put me in the oven and it's they scatter my ashes. But the business won't. It's a legacy. It's going to go on. So it's all, none of those are bad things. It's just, what do you want? What do you want to do? But the worst thing you do is think as a legacy business is something that you're going to hand off to your kids or your grandkids or something like that, because that might not be the case. Good matter of fact, there's a good chance it's not. And so you've got to look at it that way. Um, some closing thoughts. Mastering your skills won't just make you better business. It's gonna make you unstoppable. It's gonna make you unstoppable in life and in business. Every pivot, every breakthrough, every challenge, every speed bump is developing the right tools. You're learning from it. You got to invest in yourself, you got to invest in your mind, and you got to move ahead. And then mastering the emotional game that's the probably the biggest part of this um, uh, is emotional structure, emotional discipline. Is I had something said to me last night, and it bothered me for about 15 minutes. I like, I even going to think about this tomorrow, and the answer was no, out of my mind. It was gone. It was gone. Mastering the financial game is that you've got to master the strategy of finances, master the strategy of taxes. And then above all, you've got to master yourself. You've got to be a master of your mind, yourself, your control, what you say. I love this that I heard this Warren Buffett. It was a quote that I read, and he probably said it a long time ago, but it takes 20 years to build a really, really solid reputation. It takes 5 minutes to ruin it. And so you've got to be very careful what you're saying, what you're putting out there to the world, because in a very short period of time, it can all disappear. So none of this will impact your business or your life if you don't take action. You got to be extremely dedicated, and you've got to be disciplined to make this happen. Uh, on the heels of that, we would love to hear what are your needs? What do you need to hear about? What would help you? What could we bring in on the podcast as a subject or even an expert, somebody that would help change your life? And so you can send that over to me at Renny@detailingsuccess.com. And we'd love to hear from you. Also, if we impact you, our goal, and Oscar and Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, our goal from the first podcast, this is, I think, 200, what episode is this? 200 and something, is
Seven,
we, what is it?
like 206, seven, I think.
Yeah. So our goal is to impact one person every single episode. And normally we impact a lot more than that. We hear from a lot of people, but we would love to hear that back from you. We really would. And it just motivates us. Also, if you wouldn't mind, hit the share button, share this, put it on, tell people about it. Give us a good review. That's how we pay for this. But I want to thank hey Becky, thanks for coming in. Oscar, thanks for being here. PNS Products, thanks for backing us up. Dynabrade, thanks for backing us up. The entire detailing industry, thank you. So many people are backers. We see that with the projects we do, and we just want to thank all of you. Oscar, I don't know if you got that slide with the Air Force One. Maybe bring that up, and we'll kind of show that if you do. If not, we'll catch it at this next one. But we just want to thank the industry. We want to thank for all of you being here, and coming in and listening and being a part of it. And we hope that you go out and have a powerful week. Make sure to go over to detailingsuccess.com, sign up for a newsletter. A lot of stuff goes out via that. Becky works really hard on that. So, guys, I think we're set. There you go. Look at this. Look at the list of people on this banner right here. These are all people that are making a historic project happen, a preservation of a piece of Americana, but not only that, but a piece of world history that we get to preserve. We've been doing it for 22 years. But all of these companies come together, and we can't, ego, ragtop, flex. I mean, details, the detail meter. If you're not using that thing, we just used it again. I had a buddy in here with his classic car, and we were reading it. Uber Detail, it's just tier, top tier. IGL Coatings, Detail Link, Grit Guard, IK Sprayer, Stinger, CCI Car Candy, Buff and Shine, Detailers Roadmap, You're Able, Dr. Color Chip, Apex, the ATG family of brands, Dynabrade, PNS. That's a big part of our industry that's standing up with us and saying, "Hey, we'll help out." You know why? Is because we're building and pushing entrepreneurs ahead. And we just want to thank all of those people I just read off. It's a pretty amazing time. So Becky, Oscar, I'll talk to you, I'm sure, a little later today. Oscar, you look a little rested. So
Yeah,
keep doing it.
I've had some rest, not traveling, which is good. I'll be back on, see you guys on Sunday for the grand opening.
There you go.
Uh,
Yeah, we're going to be
yes,
up there. So let's talk about that real quick. We're going to be there on Sunday. We got a grand opening of a brand new store up in the high desert in Victorville. And so, Oscar, you got the information, or Becky, right in front of you about what's going on with that. We'll be
uh,
sharing some stuff too.
yeah, so it's called Gloss Lab Detail Supplies, and
Hmm.
we'll be up there. Obviously, you'll be up there with PNS, Dynabrade. We'll be out there representing with Stinger Detailing Mafia, Detailing Success. But please come out and support. It is this Sunday, June 29th, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. And it is 12454 Industrial Center Drive, number 113 in Victorville, next to Esperia.
Yeah, there you go.
High
Yeah.
Desert. It's gonna be great. They got a DJ coming out. I think they got a DJ. We're gonna have some food. Definitely just come out, mingle, support. I love these grand openings. You know, Rebecca and her husband, and they've been doing such a great job. I've been following them on social media a lot, and just kind of seeing the whole transformation of the store. I can't wait to see it live. I was supposed to be there last Wednesday, but we got caught up in Big Bear. I'm sorry. But I will be there first thing in the morning on Sunday to actually help them out. So I'll be there all day helping them out, setting up. If you guys want to come out early and check it out. But today's actually their soft opening, as I saw on social media. They have a soft opening today. They do have water out
That's
there.
cool.
So the detailers, I've been seeing a bunch of detailers in the Victorville area going up there for water. But again, this is just something else that we get out there, try to get Renny out there and do some of these events. If you have anything in mind or any events like that, please get a hold of us, either Renny, Becky, or myself, and let's see if we can make it happen.
Yeah, get a hold of Becky or Oscar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get a hold of Becky.
Yeah,
Becky
yeah.
knows the
Yeah,
schedule.
she's the
I got
gatekeeper.
it.
That's going to be the
You
best.
call me and say, "Hey, we want ready to show up." I'm be like, "Get a hold of Becky. Becky's
Yeah.
got it."
Yeah, it's great. All right, guys. Hey, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.